I'm curious on the session right now, and I'm curious on the topic. It's a little bit a topic which is related to the previous talk, but this is more on the offense side, a little bit more on the offense side, and discusses ethically and juristic
legal.
Thank you. Legal issues about scanning systems. In Germany, where we are currently, is the so-called hacker paragraph, a law which kind of forbids certain actions on systems you want to test from the internet. So I'm curious what you guys have to tell us. Give a round of applause to the both of them, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you again. This talk is called Scanning for Vulnerabilities Without Getting into Trouble. But a little disclaimer here, of course you can still get into trouble after this talk, but we hope to give you some more background and some more understanding about the legal side and also the ethical considerations you should make when conducting your web scans. So my name is Florian Handke and I'm from CISP, a PhD candidate, and I'm here with my colleague.
Yeah, I'm Sebastian from postdoc at TU Wien, and I have done my PhD in the research group where Florian is currently working. And we're both doing web security research, and something that we then very often take a look at is the OWASP top 10. And as well, most of you probably know them, and as you can see here, the vast majority of them are actually server-side vulnerabilities. However, if we take a look at the research that is out there and the research that we were doing, the vast majority out there is actually focusing on client-side security, at least if it comes to large-scale vulnerability measurements. There are papers that deal with the server side, but those are rarely large-scale, or nearly never, large-scale scans, but only papers that took a look at a few open source repositories and scanned for vulnerabilities in their code. The reason for that is, as a recent paper pointed out, large-scale scans for server-side vulnerabilities are hard to do both or have ethical and legal challenges.
Yeah, so what are these challenges? For our research on the legal side, our assumption was that hacking the server side is illegal from a criminal views point. And we wanted to know how strict the legal rules are and how binding they are, where the boundaries lie. So to give you some background on that, in Germany we basically have two relevant paragraphs related to security research in the criminal law. We have 202A and the following, which means you are not allowed to gain unauthorized access to protected data or intercept any data transactions. Also, the production and the possession of hacker tools, and hacker tools is very broad here, is illegal. It should be mentioned that there was clarification and the easing on this latter part, on the 202C, a few years ago, but it's not stated in the paragraph itself. We also have 303A and the following, which makes the manipulation and destruction of data punishable. On the ethics side, we see that ethical research has become more and more popular in our research community, but also to society. It's more important to think about the ethical consequences of research. And it was unclear to us what would be still accepted, what is ethical accepted research and what is unethical, what harm would be okay, what would not be okay. So again, here we wanted to understand how strict these boundaries, the ethical boundaries are. And in general, we wanted to find a way to to conduct such server-side research legally and ethically. To give you some background on how the ethics side for papers, for us academic researchers work, first, of course, we plan our study. We come up with a cool idea that we want to conduct. And if there are any ethical considerations in a project, like you have human subjects involved in your project, you typically go to some kind of institutional review board. In America, IRBs, for instance, they are mandatory. Here in Germany, I know institutes, they don't have a review board, but they are building more and more. And they would give you some feedback on your research idea. It's also very much compliance work, but they give you the first approval on your research. Then you would execute your research and you would hope that nothing breaks, nothing happens, and eventually you write it down to a paper and submit it to a conference where you have the peer reviewing system that I think many of you know. And at the large conferences nowadays, you also have research ethics committees that take a look on the paper, how it is written down, maybe ask you some ethical questions about your research, go into a discussion with you if there are things that they want you to clarify on the ethical part, and then you hopefully get accepted and published at a conference. So as I said, we wanted to find a way how to conduct such server-side research ethically and legally.
Yeah, to find those red lines for ethic and legal server-side vulnerability scans, we conducted a semi-structured interview with law experts, with ethic experts, so people that are serving in those review ethic committees at the top conferences, and those people that are actually affected by server-side vulnerability scans, the website's operators. We asked them 5 different scenarios for server-side attacks and wanted to hear their thoughts on the ethical part of, or how ethical and how legal those vulnerability scans would be. To enrich this qualitative data with quantitative data, we also conducted a survey with nearly 120 web operators to see whether the impressions that we got from the interviews for the web operators also are true at scale. With the data that we got from those surveys and those interviews, we then came up with recommendations how to ethically and legally scan for server-side vulnerabilities. As said, we had 5 scenarios here, and the idea is now that we go through those 5 scenarios, probably only like 2, 3 of them, depending on the time, and present you the scenarios and ask you what are your thoughts on the ethic and legal boundaries there. The first scenario is Alice, and Alice wants to scan for SQL vulnerabilities. And to do that, she uses the sleep method to see whether, if she issues the request and it takes longer than 1 second to return, probably there was a sleep involved on the server side. Any thoughts on the ethical and legal issues that we can cause here? I think Dirk has a microphone that he can hand over to you. So,
okay, Tim.
Yeah, so from my perspective, that would be fine because there's no exfiltration of data and no real harm caused. So you would just see that the response needs a bit longer, I guess.
Okay. Any other opinions?
There's another hand. Ooh, he's running.
Yeah. Turned into a sports event.
Yeah. I would say it's about consent, first of all. Like, you can't just scan somebody's server without that person, the business being aware of it, because it could cause potential disruption of this service. So more like, denial of service. So I would say it shouldn't be okay. You should get at least, it's like with GDPR, you have to click something. Yeah, but again, it's just more like incurs in terms of outages or like disruptions, then there would be a liability.
Okay, well, let's take a look into what our participants said. On the legal side, as already pointed out, we didn't exfiltrate any data. So regarding the 202 paragraph, we are kind of safe here. However, because you could argue that manipulating the response time, for example, is actually manipulating data. And it could also happen that indeed a sleep might disrupt the service there, depending on how the app is built, or might even crash some of the services, which would then definitely be computer sabotage. Similarly, the ethics people pointed out that it might happen that we are crashing some services there, and that's, well, of course, an issue. And and another thing that they mentioned is that we should test, or if you are doing that, you should test it in a pre-study to be at least sure that the probability that this happens in the wild is sufficiently low. But they also mentioned that using sleep is a nice way of balancing risk and harm, which is something that they want to see at those ethical committees, that people really thought about how to reduce the harm that we can cause with our scans. Similar to what regarding the web operators, the vast majority of operators were actually fine with us executing, or fine with Alice doing this SQL injection. And yeah, so it seems to be possible to scan for SQL injections in the wild.
Okay, then let's look at the next scenario, and the next scenario is Bob, and Bob sends a non-standard compliant HTTP request to a bunch of web servers, again in a large scale. So for instance, putting a white space in an HTTP header. This then causes a server to crash, but it is unintentional. And the result, of course, is that the operators have to reboot the server. So what do you think about this scenario? Any ethical considerations, any legal aspects? Tim again, I think.
I would say it harms the availability, and this would also mean that other person can't reach the web application. So I don't think that's a very good idea.
Any other ideas?
I think David has. Oh, there, yeah, maybe you and then David.
I think legally it usually makes a difference if it's intentional or unintentional, but it would probably be hard to prove that it was unintentional. But just for the legality of it, I think that also makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. I think David had one comment.
On the way.
I believe if you're unaware of the crash, like it's by accident and it crashes the application, then that's an issue with the application. Like every input you put into the application, even if it's like your name in the form field, if it has a special character, it could crash the application, so you couldn't interact with any website at all, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, let's see what the experts said. And on the legal side, you could argue it is 303B, computer sabotage if the server crashes, but yeah, as you pointed out, it very much depends on whether Bob knew and expected what would happen. And of course, it's hard to prove that, but if you do enough pre-testing and document that, you could use this as an argument that you did really do enough and would not expecting this, any server to crash. And one expert also said it very much depends on the probability of this crash. But this is only the criminal law, and from the civil law perspective, operators are of course always allowed to demand compensation for any damage you caused with such a crash. And I think this is the worst part here because it can be very expensive if a company has to reboot the server and the service is unavailable for a while. From the ethics side, they pointed out that, again, it is very important to minimize all the risk and, yeah, do pre-testing, test all configurations you can think of, all the setups, and do monitoring, because if you find that one of your requests crashes a server, you should immediately stop it. It's ethically okay if you're not aware of this problem beforehand, and if you did not expect a server to crash, but you should do monitoring, and if something crashes, you should stop it. Good. I think we have enough time for one more. Yeah?
Should work. Yeah.
I forgot about this. Yeah, the operators, they were very unsure about this. It was more than 50% said, yeah, it would be fine, but yeah, also a big amount of them, big numbers said, nah, not so good. So it's a bit, yeah, that one is a bit more tricky than the previous one. Okay, last one, but a quick one.
Yeah, Charlie wants to scan for IDOR vulnerabilities. On the one hand in GET requests, on the other hand in POST requests, and there changes some user IDs. So any thoughts on that?
Maybe, yeah, one thought there.
So I'd say that's a manipulation. You exfiltrate data, and that doesn't fly. So that's not okay.
Okay, I think we should continue time-wise.
Just one more?
Okay, one more.
Okay, yeah, very briefly, I think it's not good. You should create demo accounts and do it on your own accounts to not harm any other users.
Okay, let's see what the expert said here. On the legal side, well, yes, you are leaking data here. However, you are not bypassing any protection mechanism, or at least you could argue that just changing an ID is not much of a protection mechanism here. So it is probably legal to do the GET requests. However, if you do POST requests, well, you are changing data, which is strictly illegal according to the 303A. So don't do POST requests here. Similarly, the ethics committee said, okay, well, if you are doing the GET requests, it will lead to discussions, but probably the paper will go in. However, if you're doing POST requests, a no-go, don't do this. Yeah, and they also suggested what was suggested here, creating 2 accounts and stealing, well, the data of yourself, which is then more ethical. Also, well, the operators painted a similar picture. GET requests they are fine with GET requests, but for POST requests, they were more on the please don't do this at home part. Okay, then we will probably time-wise skip a few scenarios here and continue.
We still can do one? But we have takeaway messages as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, the general assessments we took away from all the interviews we took and we conducted. So on the legal side, we saw from the experts that some things are possible, some things would be illegal. There's never 100% assurance on this side, which means to lower the risk for us as researchers, legislative actions are needed, change in law is needed. But we also know that the web is not just bound to Germany, the web is global. So we need global international rules here, international policies to allow such kind of research for us academic researchers as well as private researchers. From the ethics side, we got the impression, got the feeling that it is possible to discuss many different research ideas with the ethics boards. For them, it's very important that you consider the harm, the potential for harm with your research and balances it with the benefit it brings to the academic side, but also to society. And a good way to do this is to consider all parts of your research, all the stakeholders, and do a stakeholder analysis where you think about the harm and the benefit for each stakeholder. And of course, in-depth discussions with your peers to find better ways to conduct the research with lowering the harm. From the operators, we got the impression that they are very open to such kind of research. One of them said, and we heard a similar statement multiple times, at the end of the day, the bad guys do it. And I think he's very right here. Such requests fly through the internet all the time, so the bad guys do it anyways. Most of the operators would not consider legal actions against researchers, but some of them said they might be obligated by their company to do so. Coming back to the legal side, I wanted to talk about the cool changes we will have to the criminal code in Germany soon, because there was a push to change. There were some good ideas in it. There's still some criticism. But yeah, as we heard this morning, it's not going to happen. Yeah, but if you want to get more info about this, approach me during the break and we can have a chat.
Yeah, regarding recommendations, we already mentioned a few in the scenarios, like, for example, doing a laboratory pre-study to be sure that you are not crashing any services. But most of them are, mentioned in scenarios, and I would refer to the paper here and focus on one single point, the pre-registration board. Many operators mentioned that it would be nice for them if they could easily detect, for example, if maliciously looking traffic is coming from a malicious actor or from somebody that is doing pen testing or even a research project. And here it would be awesome if we would have an institution, for example, if it is a community-driven thing, an internationally operating institution that is dealing with security vulnerabilities like the OWASP, having such a pre-registration board where researchers can register their project and also their IP address, and then if operators are detecting some funky traffic there, they can ask at OWASP, hey, do you know whether this is a research project or a pen testing try, or should we actually contact our data protection officer here? So if anybody from OWASP is interested into talking about this in detail, we are very open for this. Okay, yeah. Let me quickly summarize what we have seen in the last 20 minutes. Well, on the we definitely need legal changes here, because in German law it's very illegal in many cases, although in some cases it is possible to do server-side scans. With the, proposed change, it would have been easier, but it's not coming. But even if the hacker paragraph would have changed, the web is a global thing, and we need international legal actions here. For the developers, we're mostly fine with us doing research. As Florian pointed out, the bad guys do it anyway. And they want to have more transparency, for example, with this pre-registration board. And for the ethic review board, what they really want to see, or their takeaway was always, they want to see that you take very much care that you reduce the risk of causing harm as much as possible. So they want to really see this balance of risk and reward for the research that we are conducting. And with that, thanks for your attention, and feel free to ask questions.
One question, maybe.
If not, we have multiple scenarios left. So. In the back.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thanks for the cool talk. At the moment, it is illegal to use the vulnerabilities to enter systems. And so your examples, in my opinion, these are huge implementation flaws. So when I use them at the moment, I might be acting illegally. But regarding the NIS2 or other regulations which obligates companies to ensure their software, do you have any opinion how the legal consequences would be then? Because when I find a vulnerability and use it, so I'm acting illegally, but the company also actually has the obligation to not have such a vulnerability.
If I understood it in the NIST talk correctly in the morning, they only have to report if it was a heavy incident. So if something really bad happened. So if it is, I don't know, a crash, a very short downtime of the database because somebody issued a sleep command, that's probably, I guess, I don't know exactly, but probably not one of those heavy incidents. But still, if they somehow detect that there was data leaked, even if it was from, well, a second account of the review of the researcher, they are then kind of forced to contact the BSI because there is a data protection issue here, and I think there they don't have this only if a lot of data was stolen thing.
Yeah, and I think even then they could still sue you because it is illegal. I mean, you can sue them for not protecting the data, but they could sue you back for hacking them. So, yeah. But we see on the legal side that there is a rethinking or motivation to going in a better direction. Hopefully in the next legislation there will be a change. Honestly, not too hopeful about that, but we will see. Let's hope that the laws will change and that things get better for us hackers.
Okay. Thanks again.